Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough. Let's talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender. Oh, Avatar. In all of Nickelodeon's 2000s programming, this is often cited as its all-time best. Sure, SpongeBob might be their breadwinner, and we all have our own personal favorites to pick from, but something about this show got basically everything right. This was a show that genuinely cared about telling a good story rather than just making a quick buck off of easy-to-digest, studio-approved slop. As a result, the show has gotten its due praise throughout the years. It was able to end fairly strongly despite Nick rushing its last season. They made plenty of merchandise, such as a sequel series with Legend of Korra, various books and comics, U2's figurines and plushies, a Netflix remake series in live action that I heard actually wasn't all that great, and plenty of video games. Which is exactly what we'll be talking about today. Sort of. Because it's a game based on the crappy 2010 live action movie. Yeah, I know. Does anything really need to be said about M. Night Shyamalan's Last Airbender movie? I mean, it's still fun to talk about how bad it is. I mean, for crying out loud, it's the movie with bad acting, mispronounced character names, and the penis hair, for God's sake. This is one of those movies where even if you're not familiar with the source material, like, at all, it's really bad. Even working with the show's creators didn't save it from being an otherwise massive disaster. The point is, everyone has reviewed it, including this very channel, so we're not going to go too much into why the movie itself sucks. I'm pretty sure we're all well aware at this point about how bad the movie is. Hey, now it feels like everything comes full circle, right? Not only is it a crappy tie-in game based on an already crappy movie, which was a crappy adaptation of a beloved show, but it's for the Nintendo Wii, and it was made by THQ. If those aren't the markings of a great game, I really don't want to know what is, so let's just get it over with. This is Last Airbender for the Wii. Let's just get this over with. So we begin with the backstory about the invading Fire Nations that attacked and how one true Avatar will come and save everybody. If anything, the art style in these cutscenes looks pretty neat. It sort of has a Okami sort of thing going on. I like it. But you still have to deal with the dumb mispronunciation of characters' names.
They killed the Avatar.
I'm sorry, I'm never gonna get used to that. So here's the thing with this game, and you'll see throughout the course of this review. In some levels, you play as Zuko, and then in other levels, you play as Aang, as if we're seeing the same story from two rivaling perspectives, which is actually an interesting concept. Oh, so you're playing as the main hero and the main villain. Okay, that's kind of cool. Who knows, maybe a little bit later on in the game there's other characters you can play as, like Katara or Sokka or... oh, nothing? None of that? Oh, okay, well, never mind. Either way, first level in and we're playing as Zuko on board one of the Fire Nation's ships. Wander around the ship for a while, get used to the jumping controls, and it's here we get to the main objective, taking out these pirate guys in a style much similar to your average action fighting game. In order to continue, you must take out these enemies with typical punches, kicks, combo moves, as well as fire-bending abilities with a long-range fireball attack, and this heavy move that can temporarily make you invincible. In addition to all of this, you can go around completing puzzles, if you even want to call them that. They're really more just locating hidden items or throwing certain things to open corridors or hitting these things and then the game just kind of goes, congratulations, you did something, good job. So far so good, right? Well, here's the first stupid thing that I noticed. Certain areas of the ship are blocked off and you're not allowed to go through them because they're surrounded by fire. Hold on. Zuko, a royal of the Fire Nation, is not allowed to enter an area of the ship because it's surrounded with fire. You know, it's not like he's kind of known for having special abilities that relate to fire? Or what, are we gonna go by the movie's rules and that firebenders aren't allowed to spit fire from their hands unless they're advanced firebenders or have some kind of open source right by them? God, this movie was stupid. As for the gameplay, once you get used to the controls and the fighting moves, it is playable, but it gets repetitive quick. Seriously, I've made it like halfway through this stage and everything looks the same, the locations, the enemies, and after a while I started thinking maybe I went backwards in the level by accident. Thank God this game has checkpoints because I really didn't want to restart this thing. Finally, once you get to the outer levels of the ship, the fighting controls show off some of their flaws. My biggest issue is with the enemy life bars. They're pretty inconsistent. Sometimes they're shared amongst a group of enemies, and other times it seems like it's based on how much damage you do to one of these guys specifically. Another gameplay style are these first-person rail shooter segments where you have to throw fireballs from your hands. They just kind of appear in the middle of levels, and they're mostly very easy. Mainly because it seems the enemies are walking as slow as zombies. Well, it was 2010, and Call of Duty and shooter games in general were kind of the big thing at the time, so I guess it's kind of easy to see why they put it in there, even if it does feel incredibly disconnected to the rest of the level. Anyway, onto the boss fight, which sets the stage for how most of the boss fights in this game are going to go. You're pitted against somebody, you throw some hits, they throw some hits, the area shifts further and things escalate. They're pretty standard, I gotta say. Not too hard or difficult, but nothing very memorable either. Next level, we're playing as Aang.
The monks named me Ang.
Shut up. And honestly, he's better to play as compared to Zuko. Major difference with his abilities is that he can control items that you can slam down on enemies or certain areas. It's helpful and pretty awesome, but even these Aang stages have some dumb moments, namely the platforming. Yeah, you have to go jumping around these areas and it looks pretty ridiculous. And add to that, there are these times where the camera gets stuck and the game starts to lag and you'll have to go back and reposition the camera so you could properly make progress. Other than that, it's pretty much the same thing, but you're Aang instead of Zuko. I should also mention there are these power orb things that replenish your life bar, hidden in corners and pottery and such. The red orbs being regular health, and the blue orbs being your spirit energy. Going back to the puzzle segments, you can locate and collect these medals, which unlock concept art and promotional art for the movie and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not really that impressive, honestly. Collecting all of them gives you a 100% thing at the end of the game, but I just didn't care, really. Here's where the game takes a bit of a curveball, and instead of playing as Zuko himself, you're now playing as Zuko's alter ego, the Blue Spirit. It's here where the gameplay gets some new things introduced, like the ability to climb walls, and stealth missions where you can take out enemies with one swipe of your sword. Oh my god. Is it just me, or is this game actually starting to become kind of good? Nah, the game still has plenty to criticize. Like you'd expect, the enemies do get harder as the game goes on, and for the most part, you're gonna be jumping around and spamming attacks like crazy. Not just because they start spamming enemies left and right at you, but because the camera keeps flailing around and it makes it hard to focus on anything. Hell, there's a part later on in the game where there's this trick that you can use so that you don't have to deal with all the enemies. You have to hold C on the nunchuck, and you enter this thing called Insight Mode. Here you could just skip gaggles of enemies at a time and face the ones that are truly imperative to the gameplay. Now, I don't know if I should be disappointed by the fact that I'm skipping long stretches of gameplay, or happy by the fact that the game is like half over. Screw it, yeah, I'm gonna go with the latter on that one. Anyway, the next boss fight that Aang has to go up against is a giant Fire Nation tank. And sadly, it's not as cool as it sounds. Really, what this boss fight amounts to is leading the tank into a bunch of stacked towers or pillars or whatever these are supposed to be, which the tank then crashes into. It would have been a lot cooler if we were fighting the thing one-on-one, but nah. It's mostly just moving over behind one of these stacks to another, and then the tank crashes into it very stupidly. After that, we can finally move on to something that's not a ship or a temple. Now we're in the Northern Water Tribes. Here you fight giant bug creatures? You know, I would complain that this is nothing like the movie, but considering the movie it's based on, if they told me to make a game based on Last Airbender, I'd try my best to stay off script as much as possible, so I can't really begrudge them for it. Seriously though, giant bug creatures, that's still a weird choice. I mean, there is a possibility they were basing this off of the giant insect creatures in the Earth Kingdom from the show, but that's confusing because this is a water tribe and insects don't really do well in colder climates, so either way, this whole thing is just confusing. We'll get used to them because they're going to be used a lot in the game from this point forward. Also, get used to more bad platforming as you have to go up this spiral staircase made of ice. Much like the platforming in that one level in the Polar Express game, one wrong jump and you will fall and fall and fall and work your way all the way back up. Believe me, this whole location just isn't really fun to traverse as Aang or Zuko, whatever. Boss fight for this level is a giant bug monster that you have to fight as Aang. You can take it out by jumping on these hive things, then you have to wing your way up to a higher platform, and then knock a stalactite down so that it falls and impales the beast. I don't even want a serious answer for this or anything, but do you think that this was possibly a thing in one of the original drafts of the script, and they were basing this level off of that, but then it got cut from the movie and they just put it in anyway? I went looking to see if I could find a concrete answer, and I didn't find anything, but still, isn't that a little interesting food for thought? And now the level that is the biggest pain in the ass in the game, the last level. The level itself is set in a water tribe city, and it's like the game gives you a little bit of everything we've done up until this point, but ramped up to 100. You have to take on enemies, climb walls, solve puzzles, jump from platform to platform, boss fight that mostly sucks because of the stupid-ass camera, doing it twice as a different character. Finally, we get to the final boss, who is, appropriately enough, General Zhao. Oh, well, alright. That's cool. It's different from the movie. Who knows, maybe this will be a pretty awesome boss fight to end the game on. I mean, it is, but buckle up, because this is going to be difficult. This boss fight is a hard sumbitch. It's one of those boss fights that's 3 times the length of the other boss fights we've had. Interspersed with one-on-one combat, you have to go up against gaggles of enemies, these slow-motion quick-time event fights, smashing fire cages to help keep your firebending active. It's just a bunch of busy work, and it took me a few tries, but eventually I was able to take them down. So that was Last Airbender for the Wii, and is it better than the movie it's based on? Yes. Does that make it a great game by any means? Not really. Honestly, the biggest flaw here is the repetitive gameplay. Like I said at the beginning, it is an interesting concept to play the whole game as both hero and villain, but after a while, it really just feels like you're playing the same level twice, back to back, which just gets monotonous. Everything else is honestly mediocre at best. The controls aren't horrible, the gameplay is playable, the graphics are decent, the difficulty is average at best. It's easy to see why this did have at least a few positive reviews, mostly because it doesn't have a lot of the same flaws that this turd blossom has. I actually never got around to playing it, but I am kind of curious to see what the multiplayer arena mode thing looks like in this game. But hey, why settle for something like this when there's already a Wii game based on the actual Avatar Last Airbender show? Let's see what that looks like. I mean, I bet if it's gonna be like the show, it's gotta be awesome, right? Oh my god, Avatar deserved so much better than this, dude.
He was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree. It really hurt.
You are wearing fucking armor! It should just bounce off!